Most of the things you're trying to achieve are impact for people's lives to better them. There's 1.5 million young men in football academies in this country at the moment. 0.025% make it to contract level. So that means there's a whole bunch of people that need some help.
What's the biggest challenge nowadays for Maikai?
Was that a hard decision to leave?
David Ellis, the former chief executive of Harlequins Rugby Club, is back with Maikai, an impact agency with a vision to make a positive impact on the planet through sport as a force for good using underutilized levies for apprenticeships.
It's genuine harnessing of its power to make change happen.
Decisions get made that are better for the business, but the fans may not like it.
So there's a huge amount of wage disparity there, which has got to be dealt with.
You see an opportunity to make an impact as opposed to an opportunity to make a lot of money.
Not only is it the right thing to do, it's the right thing to do for the business.
Yeah. Who should be most excited as a beneficiary of what Maikai is trying to achieve? Today's episode is brought to you by Profile, a PR agency that turns entrepreneurs and CEOs into industry leaders through media coverage, LinkedIn, and video.
LinkedIn, media, and speaking opportunities are often an afterthought, especially for CEOs. They just don't have the time. That's where Profile step in. They take care of everything. They're an end-to-end service, so you can hand over the profile building to them and worry about driving the growth of your business.
So if you've got a story to tell and you want to build a profile as an entrepreneur or industry leader, you can find out more by going to www.welcometoprofile.com. I want to talk about rugby, but I don't really want to talk about rugby. I want to talk about the running of a sports club as a business. So I'm not particularly, I'm not a regular watcher of rugby.
Sure.
I used to play it when I was much younger.
What was your position?
I was a winger.
I was going to say, you're a winger. You're too good looking.
I basically let the inside and outside centres get munched, and I'll be like, no, it didn't get to me. So just want to touch on it from a sports fan aspect. It's probably a part of your life that you're very familiar talking about, and I think it's the thing I'm most interested in is running a business and trying to marry that with a sports club. Most businesses don't have fans. And so sometimes decisions get made that are better for the business, but the fans may not like it. And I think in today's day and age, I imagine if fans were happy or not happy whilst you were there, they'd look now at clubs like Wasps and London Irish and think, well, thank God we had someone who was conscious of running
I understand what you're saying.
Running a club properly rather than just giving the fans what they want.
You're paid to be a custodian of something.
Yes.
And that means you have to take a long-term view.
Yeah.
Even if in the short term it's painful.
Totally.
So, and you can only do your best. Sometimes you get it right. Depending on the context you're faced with to make the decisions, you have to do it.
For sure.
So I think, I was never a professional. Well, I played a bit of sport and did okay at rugby league, but not rugby union. And then, so completely happy to talk about it. But the power of sport thing is in the influence on society. And so before I was in sport, I was in social housing, and we were in some really underserved communities across London, and saw firsthand getting football teams in estates or basketball and everything else, and what it really does create a level playing field. And so as much as running the sports club, I agree with you, happy to talk about that. It's genuine harnessing of its power to make change happen. And that depends if you're a fan or a player or you've come through those, and there's different things for that. Some people just want to win and that's all they care about. Lots of us, when we take away the passion of game day, really proud to be part of a movement. And that's what sport does locally around the UK. And it's exciting.
And I think rugby's a good one for it particularly. I mean, I'm more of a football fan than a rugby fan.
Who's your team?
I'm Man United, unfortunately. So I'm looking for a new club to jump onto because this ship is halfway in the water. But I think with the aspects of having something to club together towards obviously has its downsides too, because you do get a bit of tribalism. Particularly in football, more so I find, than with negative connotations more so than in rugby. And that's something that from like a social, because I know that what Maikai is really tapping into is the social, but to me it seems like you're putting your two previous experiences, rolling them up into one, social housing, the benefits of helping society as a whole. And then the next one is, well, I'm involved in a sports club, and if the two go together, this is what we can achieve on the back end of it.
it's the one thing that you learn if you are a sports fan is that sport isn't a business. It's kind of a social, cultural construct, and that sounds really awful. But we expect things from it in a way that we wouldn't expect business to. To your point about fans, I want to win, I want this, and actually, what's lovely is in lots of ways, it's representative of what we care about as our community.
Totally.
So I remember in my early days at Harlequins, we made some. You've got a stadium, and it's where people sit, and you have to make some moves to try and maximise money. But we moved some seats somewhere, and I just wasn't thinking about the knock-on effect of what that might mean to a whole bunch of other people. And of course I got lots of feedback going, please don't do that, and we ended up changing it back. But immediately you realise that the ripple effect of being part of this community was what really mattered to people. And then once you understand that positivity, you then say, right, how can we go and do something with that? And we did a whole bunch of other stuff.
Out of interest, why had you moved the seats?
Because you start realising that, you look at the finances of a rugby club, and then they're not overly healthy. So you're trying to say, how can I I think at the time, if I remember rightly, we wanted to build a new box and do that. So we wanted to move from one end to the other.
Right.
And it was something like that. So we said, well, it feels like that, and let's go and talk to people and do it. But actually the ripple effect of small things, because not so much that the people's seats affect, but the perception of others that it was affecting was really, really important to take into consideration. And once you go, okay, actually, hang on a minute, we've got to be really conscious of how we bring people with us.
I just think it must be such an awkward one because,
Thank you. Sorry.
You are a custodian and you want to make decisions that the fans like, but some of those decisions are a longer term play, and there's nothing to cheer if the club goes bust.
Exactly.
And so it must just be, there's something I'm really interested in to speak with you about on a personal level, because it must be hard sometimes. I'm sure you and your core team are making these decisions, and that you guys know that this is something good for the club in the long run, but it's then how do we convey that to the fans? And
everyone has that, right? Everyone has that if you could customize or anything else, but you're absolutely right. From a sports perspective, it takes on a different dynamic.
Totally.
And I think you used the word which I think we used at the beginning of this, which is a custodian, and you're not a chief exec. Well, you wear many hats, but it's the lens you look at it through. And I was lucky enough to be given the time when I first started to go around as many different types of people as possible and go, what do you think we need? What's going forward? What do we do? To just try and do, it's the obvious thing to do, but really listen. Because, as much as I've always been a rugby fan and Quins was my club and I was blessed to go there, I just come from social housing. So how could I possibly know what it really feels like to genuinely, be in the seat? And so you go and speak to the advisory board, the older teams, the different teams, and you try and get a feel for what's important. And then you bake that into your day-to-day values. So we looked at redoing, I suppose, more corporate stuff. Was, well, what do we stand for? What's our next 5-year vision? How do we do these things? And once you've got the guardrails of basically do the right thing, there's a lovely phrase that you might know is there's this book written by the guy whose name always sounds like the front singer of Simple Minds, Jim Kerr, who wrote a book called Legacy for the All Blacks. And then there's some learning from the greatest sports team ever in terms of their win ratios and everything else. And the back of it is effectively, you and sports people say this all the time, is you're only being loaned this shirt. So make it better before you hand it on to someone else. And that, I genuinely tried to, and most people in the club think that way. So that does make you think, okay, hang on a minute. Is this a short-term decision? How can I really help the club now in terms of enjoyment and what people experience, versus a long-term decision that says, I've got to be a custodian of this, because we're one of the oldest rugby clubs in the world. At the time we went through our 150th anniversary, and we were blessed to be able to go back to our archives and see its evolution, learn its story, see the people that had played and fought to make it it was the 3rd biggest rugby brand in the world by the end of it. So, and all of that, you feel like you're part of a team. And I think that's maybe when you get that outlook, it makes it easier to make some potentially uncomfortable decisions in the short term and accept that people aren't going to like if we lose constantly for a period of time, but we know we've made a certain decision, and you don't get them right and wrong, because that's why these jobs are hard all the time. But you've made certain decisions based on all the information you have and the context and the belief and the love for the club that you've got. that's all you can really do.
And you won the Premiership in your first year, correct?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
And so in hindsight, is that obviously it's a good thing that you can't say anything other than that, but is it a blessing and a curse to almost achieve almost the highest success? And obviously there's European level as well, but domestically to win the Premiership in your first year in charge is...
You mean I should have just resigned after that?
Yeah.
Go out on a high.
But it just sort of, you when you're the champion of any sport, the target's on your back. The fans are like, well, this is maybe what we should be getting used to now. We should be competing year after year, and
that's fair. But then step back and you look at rugby, and one of the wonderful things about Premiership rugby in this country is its competitive balance.
Yeah,
it's like there's so many people that could win. I can't remember the exact stats, and someone will find it. But last year, for example, I think until like the last day, 6 teams could have gone through, and it's right up to the last minute, and that's awesome.
Yeah,
it's not like the Scottish football model of old, where it's Celtic and Rangers always, and then everyone else. Actually, that sense of anyone could win it, and yes, that was our time, and we had a deep squad. It all came together, and great coach, great people, and then I think we won the LV Cup the year after, and we were competitive. And then, but you have to manage so many complex things about bringing the young players through and getting them in, and then you have injuries and all the things that something as great as Man United are facing right now. So there's so many moving parts.
Definitely.
But then here we are. When you look at the baking in of the academy, they won again 2 or 3 years ago, and it just takes these cycles to come through. And the challenge is how can you be consistently at the top? And I think that's why we all love sport, because it's hard and you don't know. So that sense of jeopardy every Saturday is as a fan, fun.
Yeah, as a chief executive, maybe not so much fun.
So, I mean, now I'm going to dive in, because obviously I'm not sure what you guys were talking about, but it sounded like a sport. You went from being the custodian, so that was, as I understand it, you were running that ship for quite some time. It's quite a length. But now you've moved from being a custodian into the shoes of a founder.
Yep.
With Maikai.
Yep.
Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes. Yeah.
To me, you went from social housing into sport. You had a very steep learning curve, no doubt, into what's new, and now you've moved into Maikai, but you've brought with it that sporting kind of essence and that effect that sport has on the people it touches. I thought it would be best to start try and understand a little bit about the vision for Maikai before it started, as you were kind of beginning to piece together
my Jerry Maguire moment of
exactly. Maybe some of the kind of fundamental moments that led you towards that idea taking shape.
It probably starts with the name. So I had spent some time as a younger man in Hawaii and fell in love with the place. So there's a little bit of that pushed me towards thinking about. So Maikai is a Hawaiian expression. Okay. It means be your best self. Help your closest be their best self, and then help your community be its best self. And it's obviously with language and the way it evolves over the centuries, but the intonation of that. And we spoke to some effectively a Hawaiian chieftain and said, look, can you help us, because we don't want to be socially inappropriate. We want to get this right. We want to get the real essence of what this means, because to your point, what we're trying to do with Maikai is actually from a custodian perspective. So as much as the founder title is right, but actually it's what you view you're trying to do. So, and I think when you look at something like social housing, you go, most of the things you're trying to achieve are impact for people's lives, to betterment, to increase, pathways to employment or social mobility or whatever. And took that essence into the sports side and say, how can we built a school with Harlequins and a bunch of other people in local communities, so how can we lend ourselves to this? We built a foundation, we did a whole bunch of stuff for young people that were excluded from school, and therefore how can we get them back on the right path? So actually a load of the stuff the club did locally, we built a women's team to engage in helping everyone engage in sport locally. So the power it transcends those models, and then so you bring that essence, as you say, into Maikai. I like that word essence. I'm going to use that in the future. So and say, well, what are we trying to achieve? So the idea was, we saw the UN Sustainable Development Goals, if that means anything, which is the 17 things that if we get right, the world's a better place for everybody. So from climate change to gender equality to social equity, etc. And there's an amazing plan that already exists. But I was so surprised, particularly in my latter years at Quins, that not that many people knew about it. And those that knew about it weren't sure what to do on a daily basis in order to deliver towards it, even though they wanted to. So hence the kernel was, we've got the second most powerful voices in the world in athletes and sport that people trust. And if we can somehow harness that energy and point it towards delivery, not just talking about, but delivery of some of these important things that we need to get right to make the world a long-term better place. And that feels like a really interesting combination of two different things that could create some really positive outcomes.
Yeah, right.
And so the idea of Maikai is to, well, Maikai 1.0, I'll say, because we've evolved actually.
Nice,
is the big vision was using sport to drive impact. Two deliberate intended consequences were, one, helping athletes who are in elite sports particularly, helping them with a different sense of their own value and worth. And what I mean by that is I saw firsthand in the broader elite sports world where athletes were defined themselves solely by their field of play or their sport or whatever it is. And so when injuries came or end of careers came, it was really tough. It was a really tough transition. So observing that, you go, well, what would happen if we could create a whole bunch of other things they cared about? So do you care about climate change? Do you care about this? And then build their knowledge, build their understanding, build their network, and therefore potential job prospects or brand prospects in the future. That gives you a different opportunity and balance when you're ready. To go and do something. And that's the deliberate intended consequence. The other deliberate intended consequence was to say is, look, and we thought about setting ourselves up as a charity, and we thought, actually, no, let's not do that. Now, we're hopefully going to get our B Corp qualification soon, if that means anything. So we've instilled in our Articles of Association people and planet before profit, so that you make the decisions and that anyone in the future has to make decisions through that lens. But the idea was, we all want to do good stuff, but particularly in commercial land, it becomes a money thing. I don't have the money. I am a good human, but I just can't afford it, or I can't.
Yes.
So how do we show people that doing good things can be more profitable?
Yes.
So we took the lens that said, how do we use the power of sport to do this good stuff, to drive sustainable impact, which means that you're getting greater commerciality. And that was the original concept.
Okay.
And we were blessed to go off, and then we said, right, let's go and talk to the biggest sports brands, because they've got big audiences. And if you've got big audiences, you can create bigger change. And we were blessed to do some really cool work early days with like Adidas and I think Coca-Cola and a whole bunch of different people. And they're going, how do we do certain things?
So how does Maikai, or who pays the bill for these initiatives?
And that's a great question, because that, when we were going for, I feel like, business speak, the product market fit, it was really hard. Because you're going in to talk to people that you know, and because of what we were talking about, everyone would talk to you. Everyone wants, you say sport and doing good, and you're not going to be shy of having meetings. What's really hard is, okay, to your point, well, where's the budget?
Yeah, who's paying?
Yeah, who's paying? And we'd find really well-minded, amazing people, organizations that would go rooting around looking for stuff, but it wasn't scalable. So, and that's where, after doing projects, we realized that long-term, we were market making, and market making is hard. It's really hard. So as much as the concept still is completely right and valid in our minds, the delivery of that is going to take a lot longer.
Yes.
And like any small business, it's about staying in the game until you ignite and everything else. So we realized that about a year ago, we stepped back a little bit and said, okay, what have we learned? We've got some amazing clients, we've got some amazing experience, we've embedded some really cool stuff in different businesses, but we're still struggling to get repetition.
Okay.
And so what should we do? And we decided to narrow a little bit. We said, okay, well, we found ourselves being pulled towards, in particular, projects in social justice, social equality, in terms of creating pathways for people and everything else. And so, okay, that's really interesting. So, and there's a lot of legislation out there that's driving environmental stuff, and there's a lot of people popping up in that space rightly to help people implement that. That's not who we are. So we then set back and said, right, where are the budgets? What can we affect? And we've now narrowed, and we're getting some really nice and lovely big traction on the skills gap.
Yeah, right.
So how do we help people from underserved communities, using things like apprenticeships and what have you, get on the right ladders, get into sport? How can sports clubs help their local communities by using things like levers like we can explain what it is later. Things like the Apprenticeship Levy, where there's money that sits there.
Well, let's just pause on that very briefly. My last question really with regards to the change then from when you had Maikai 1.0.
Yeah.
As I understand it, the Apprenticeship Levy is basically a gold pot. Right? I mean, maybe that's crass, but in essence, it's money that needs to be spent, that isn't always spent, and the regulations that were introduced in 2017 means that pot is restocked each year, and unless there is a methodology for actually deploying those funds, then it gets returned to the Treasury, which no one wants. Is that where you're targeting as your kind of the money to pay for the initiatives you plan to deploy?
I think it's definitely part of it. It's by no means, because these are fairly systemic things you're dealing with, so it's not a silver bullet. And well done. Not many people know what the Apprenticeship Levy is, which is great. So there's like at least £1 billion odd a year just left there. Yeah. And I'm sure the Treasury would like it back, but it was intended to be used to help people.
Yeah.
And so when you then think, okay, well, if there's a load of money there and we can help people, the question is, what are the problems we're trying to solve? So when you go to a Premiership football team who have very large wage bills, and because the Apprenticeship Levy is linked to the wage bill, therefore they have the potential to spend a significant amount of money on athlete transition programs because it's skills, for upskilling your existing employees, because we're going into not a job-based economy but a skills-based economy for the future.
Why are they not spending it already?
I think it's a really good question. I don't think there's one answer, but there's a combination of answers. One is there is quite a lot of red tape. And dealing with it can be quite complicated. Can I do this? Can I do that? And I think it's a sort of, not that people give up, it doesn't quite get measured in a business, it doesn't hit your P&L. So therefore it's sort of that really annoying thing that itches, but we've got other things to worry about, is something you hear. The other thing is people spend it, but don't spend it all, because part of it's about how do you raise the skills discussion to be more strategic, to say, well, and then how do I implement it becomes quite hard. So there's a whole bunch of things there. And also, they don't know what they can do with it. So there's a comms piece doing, and the government has just announced the creation of Skills England that's coming up, and their mandate, or at least I'd like to see them do this, and I think they will, because I'm really positive about it, is just get better at communicating this, because there's a real opportunity to take UK PLC and put us at the front of the queue in terms of our ability to give skills for the global economy and help ourselves. And one of the levers we've got is pulling down on this and helping people, either because you can gift it to others. Right. So you can turn around.
50% of it.
Exactly. Exactly. So you can turn around and say, look, I'm a massive business, I'm not going to use it all, but you know what, these small businesses in my local area need these skills. I'm going to gift it. Then it goes, well, how do I do that? So we put ourselves right in the middle of that. It's almost a service provider, some glue, to say, what do you need? What are your skills? We're being asked to set up like an AI and data school for a business, to say, because we want to help serve underprivileged areas, to say, go and give them skills, because in the future will be these types of jobs and these skills, and we're giving that to you. And if you can say, well, and it won't really cost you anything because you've got this.
It's free.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. So to some degree, we're trying to bring that creativity and the power of the sport to get behind it, to change the communication of it. Yeah. And I was guilty of this. There's a perception that of some areas of society that the word apprenticeship isn't aspirational. And actually, that's just not true. So we've actually ended up, call it rebadging our programs, called the Future Fit program, because it's think about it differently, because you can do AI skills, you can do anything. Of course you can do any range of skills, but the providers in the country are Ofsted rated, they're brilliant. So your opportunities are vast, but I think for a while it was, old school thinking was, well, we don't need that, we don't use that, but actually it's not the case.
Did that 2017 regulation where they encouraged companies to put aside that money, that 0.5%, have any effect on the actual birth of Maikai, or was your vision for Maikai already existing and then that came along kind of by happenstance?
We were very clear that we needed to do something in the skills space. And in the UK, for example, and I will answer the question, in the UK, the L&D budgets in general are going down. So the training is going down compared to, so you start to go, how do we elevate this conversation about skills? Because skills is directly related to economic growth and your future business. And so when you start having those conversations, you start going, actually, there's this pot of cash over here. And through those conversations, we realized that people were underutilizing it. Yeah. And then some other people came to us and said, it just came up in a different conversation. Right. And then we started testing it against CFOs of some big sports clubs. And they were like, yeah, really annoys me that we can't.
Because I noticed that the Apprenticeship Levy actually affects any company with
does
more
indeed.
than 3 million quid in payroll, which is a lot of companies.
A lot of companies.
So you've chosen to target sports because of your history, your experience and your perspective.
Correct. And because we're not, and we're going down this in deep, and it's important, but we're trying to solve problems. And so the problems in sport are things we understand. But equally, when you go to big sports clubs like a Man United, their wage bill is massive.
Right, yeah.
So therefore they've got a big pot to do good with. And if you can start connecting those dots with their brands and their communities, it's amazing. But because of sports clubs in general, going back to the business model, they tend to be huge brands, but relative to other huge brands, quite sparsely resourced or really thin at the top. So people are pedaling really hard, and to deliver some of the other more operational stuff is just a bit harder. So to then go in, so therefore they might not have got to that yet in terms of spending it and thinking clever. And there's lots of people that are doing bits around it. So it would be wrong of me to say that they haven't done anything. But actually to then come back and go, we can turn this into strategic advantage. Look what you can do for your community. Look what you can do for your women's teams. You know, one of the projects we're working on at the moment is a Premier or WSL team, and saying, you know, generalism, but the money a professional woman footballer could make in a year is probably what some professional men make in a week. So there's a huge amount of wage disparity there, which has got to be dealt with. But while we're dealing with that, the implication on that is you're not going to earn enough money as a woman footballer to set you up for the rest of your life. So you'll need a different career. You're going to need skills. So how do we deal with that issue? And once you deal with that, then it starts to become a recruitment tool, or hang on, you know, we're really looking after our players. And so you're fixing those problems. In order to, and the power of sport to create jobs, that's awesome if we could set up a big hub that says bring all these football clubs together, all these, and gift your money and deal with something at scale.
Yes.
Because we listen to our local clubs.
Yes.
You know, and it's those things that it's just a different way of looking at the problem.
I'm just wondering if I'm someone sat at home listening to this, who should be most excited as a beneficiary of what Maikai is trying to achieve?
It's really good. I think there's three main areas. One is what we've kind of touched on, is if you're an athlete and we help create another way of helping transitions, or another way of giving you skills for your future and current career. So I think that's one group of people. And I used to know the number, there's lots of elite athletes. And sometimes when we think of elite athletes, we more immediately think of football players, no one was.
Of course.
But actually that's like less than 1%.
What stage are we looking to come in and provide them with these tools? Is this when they're teenagers, before they've entered into the professional level? Or is this, hey, you're getting to the end of your career, do you fancy coming and, where are we intercepting this?
Again, good question. So if you were to look at the arc of a career, then I think, and the Apprenticeship Levy only applies to certain age groups, so you've got different options at different levels. So let's just say, you're bought into the fact that we need extra skills, and whatever lever you can to pull, you can do different things. So in theory, you'd like to augment some of the good stuff that's already going in at the very young end. Because I heard on a call the other day, and we'd have to go and check our facts, but there's 1.5 million young men in football academies in this country at the moment. 0.025% make it to contract level. So that means there's a whole bunch of people that need some help. And in the general, there's some really good stuff out there. But how can we make that better? Then when you come into say you get your first contract and you're in the academy, then it's, what's your drop-off point? Or if you can bake it in early, is what I'm trying to say, it's brilliant. Because then it's just, you're already thinking skills is important as well as me being the best I can be on the field.
So sorry, but you talk about that percentage, that 0.25%. Are we providing them with the assistance, or those that didn't make it?
Didn't make it as a drop-off. So you say, and again, you've got to look at providing the Apprenticeship Levy in that instance might not, because they'll be younger, but actually it's how do you create the skills and pathways so that you don't get a really horrible transition and everything else, because your dreams have not quite been realised, whether that be through not being selected or injury or whatever it might be.
Sure.
You then get another phase of, okay, I've got in, but there's no guarantee it's going to make me loads and loads of money. So, and therefore I still need something else. But what you're trying to do is bake into the whole system over time the mindset that it's not and or. It's like, to be a professional athlete means you have to do this. And once we get that right, it means you're not dealing with the tail end, which is, I'm retiring in a year, I must do something. And of course, to even think about it is a good thing, but in theory, you'd want to get it. So it's a really long way, apologies for saying, there's different approaches at different stages in the careers, and we have to be open to all of that until the system changes. And so what we're trying to do, one of our core philosophies is radical collaboration. We don't see competition here because we're trying to, there's already people in this space trying to help do this. How do you be the glue? How do you be the glue to help, okay, in this area, in this sport, this is an issue. Right, let's bring these experts in or bring in this training provider and let's make this start bubbling really well. And if we can do that as Maikai, we'll have business models nationally and everything else which are addressing localized and sports issues.
So going to sort of one of your areas of where Maikai comes in, existing athletes. Yeah. And obviously you've spoken about sort of the perception of footballers, we often think about, the Erling Haalands who earn £500,000 a week and we think, but actually that is very much the veneer of what it really is.
Very top of a big pyramid.
So from your time in the Harlequins, this educational piece that you wanted to give professional athletes, was it born there for you?
There's some really good people in the club and has been taken on a load since I've left that are focusing on that. So yes, there's a particular guy I'm thinking of who's in there, just spends his day getting close to the players off the field and going, how can we help? What's he do? What's the next thing? Encourage him to set up businesses and do stuff. So yeah, there were, and actually there was lots of that in lots of clubs. The challenge with everything is scale, opportunity, because it's not their core focus. Yeah. Core focus is to put out a team on a Saturday, and you want to do all these other things, but the finances constrain you. So yes, the answer is yes. It was already going on to the degree. That's how you formalise that and scale that and build it, and bring in expert knowledge to help them connect dots for all the people that they're trying to look after. So
this is going to sound like an incredibly horrible thing to say, but why should the club care? They are there to pay the players to do their job, and what they do after their career is up to them. I was going to say, well, why should any business care? So why should anyone care? Because at the end of the day, it's about human beings. It's about people. And if you don't care about your people, if you don't represent those values, if you don't truly live it, then you're not going to attract the right people. You're not going to get the longevity of teams. I remember standing in rooms where we talked to the people who had just been offered academy contracts with their parents, and we would stress that and at the time it was just the young men, because we stressed the importance of doing education alongside this. No, you're not giving up. You've got to do this because you have to look after your whole self. Yeah. And if you can look after your whole self, you're going to be a better athlete. You're going to be happy. You're going to perform at your best because you've got all of this part of you igniting. So I think it's not only is it the right thing to do, it's the right thing to do for the business. Yeah. Is to make sure you're looking after people, of course, all the time. And I think we all know that to be true. So it was a facetious question. It's not something that I believe.
Yeah. No, I get it.
But perhaps something maybe you'd hear more about in the 80s when businesses were more interested in their bottom line than they were the people within them.
If I can add, the Apprenticeship Levy is an important piece in it, right? Because if the motivation isn't there, the Apprenticeship Levy funds are there to help push that over the line. So in a sports club that feels as if perhaps they're already doing enough for their community or the players that they have, it's that accessible amount of funds that kind of makes the initiative possible, right? Or appealing.
It's exactly right. So you're now saying, the thing that you found hard, we think we might have a solution for that. Yeah. So let's release that and open up that floodgate. Equally, again, you look at, let's maybe go back to football for a second. If you look at what a Premier League club can earn in terms of its power of brand and everything else versus what a Championship or the next level down, huge wide differences. So the Apprenticeship Levy that are sort of a tier 1 versus a Premier League club will be vastly different. So we don't want to over-egg this, but it starts the conversation, and then if you can then get sponsors to contribute or do things, you can build really nice programs that look after people.
I mean, I can only imagine the contribution that those big clubs make.
And I think the challenge with all of this is it's systemic thinking, and so it's how we get everyone to come along. And what's the phrase about tides and boats rising? Because we're trying to build that change. So going back to your original question around what's it like being a founder versus being a custodian? This always has felt like being a custodian.
Right,
It's a long-term view.
Yeah.
You've got to take a long-term view on
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
And because you're creating value for loads and loads of people.
Yes.
The challenge of running the business is staying focused to get it ignited enough to be able to take the long-term view, to keep going, right, okay, we've done this, we've scaled this with 15, we've learned this, right, the next evolution of this, maybe implement some technologies, this, and we can scale and scale again. Oh, right, now let's go and do this joint venture because that adds this to the product. And it's all those real founder issues that you're actually facing with, because you can see the opportunity and the vision, as most founders can, and it's how you prioritize your time.
Yeah, but your vision's a little bit unique to me in that you seem to just want to do good things, and I keep trying to sort of bait you in with the 1.1 billion in funds and get you to kind of rub your grubby little mitts together and say like, you've started this company to become rich, but it seems to me like you actually you see an opportunity to make an impact as opposed to an opportunity to make a lot of money.
100%.
Even if the two coincide.
Well, I think that's the point. It's 100% has to make impact. But I still need to feed my family and everything else, so we have to make money. And it doesn't work if we don't make money. But we make our decisions based on people and planet to drive the money.
Yes.
So,
and can Maikai receive Apprenticeship Levy funds? So you haven't. You talked about the red tape, and I don't want to get too nitty gritty.
Not where we are at the moment. So we help facilitate that, and then what you get in the UK at the moment is, and there's potentially changes coming. Well, there will be changes coming in the autumn statement in October, which we think is going to be really positive. But there's a whole bunch of amazing accredited educational providers that do all the running of the detailed courses. Like we have a partner called Multiverse, which is brilliant. It's just really focused on AI. We partnered with Bauer Media, which is a big, to do some really cool bespoke courses for content creation. So they're the experts. What we've done is helped solve the problem with the experts by our side. So we don't receive, we point the levy straight into the experts to help do that, but we wrap around and build the impact element of that. So.
And are you allowed to take a margin of the levy?
We are not allowed to take a margin off the levy. No, the levy is rightly for looking after people. The financial model will come from partnerships to say, well, thanks very much, you've helped us do this, therefore that's of value. We will get some consultancy money for helping, say, solve the problem. And then actually the next part of our model is at some point, and we're accelerating down this, it's all very well to say, help me find a job, help me do this and do the apprenticeship, but you need to know you've got sort of a permanent role.
Right.
So we've got a recruitment business we're going to build to say, well, hang on a minute, we've got to put our money where our mouth is. And all of that's super exciting, because then you've really got the end-to-end piece. Because then you say, right, we've done this, but now we've put 10,000 people into employment or something in the future, and that's where we're. And so there's our revenue there, but that also extends our impact.
It feels like you're really putting your arm around someone. If you can imagine a professional athlete, and they haven't made £500,000 a week for 10 years, and they break their leg or their career is over, they have knee injuries, and they just think, well, what am I going to do next? Not only are you sort of there to say, well, let us help train you up and give you some ideas of where you can go. It's actually the full package of, we'll help you get somewhere. Let us help you get there. And I think that, financial security is the number one cause of anxiety for most people. And so to be able to really guide these people in their moment of potential crisis, if you're dealing with that tier,
there's people on the front line, and we're supporting those people. So, your first point of call in those business models, yes, I take the notion that we're trying to help, but we're only part of a team of other people who are trying to help. And I think I don't want to over-reg that, but what we're trying to offer that team who are on the front line, i.e. the player care guys and girls, is here's another tool. Here's something that could really make a difference, because we've managed to pull the end-to-end together. And it becomes part of, there's this expression I've picked up, and I'm sure you guys know it, if there's a gold rush going on, sell them a pick and a shovel. If every business could just do this, it would be great, because it's just what we do.
But you have a very clear, distinct vision of the positive effect you can deliver. You understand the marketplace you're playing in with regards to the regulation and stuff like that. What's the biggest challenge nowadays for Maikai?
Good question. There's a couple of challenges. One is the adoption rate of doing this stuff. So it takes a while to go, what skills do I need? Which people do I need to help? And of course, adoption rates can slow you down until you begin to scale that. So I think from as a young business, it's the simple things like working capital, time it takes to do these things. So those things are, and we're about to go and do a fundraise to help us scale some of that. I think that's one thing. I think we've probably in the early days gone, hey, do you know this apprenticeship levy thing? And everyone's like, oh yeah, great. And then, but actually what we should have done is, what's your biggest issue right now? And can we help you with that? I.e., we're really upset with the disparity of pay between the women's team and the men's team. Right, let's do something about that. And make it a problem that's really urgent, because actually the learning, and we're beginning to understand that, but because the apprenticeship levy was something we were trying to educate people on, but because it wasn't on anyone's really high priority to-do list, it would fall into, we'll deal with that next year. Whereas actually what you're saying is, yes, but to your very eloquent at the beginning, well, if you wait, you're just losing all that money. So how do we create urgency? So the sense of how do you create urgency to do something about it? And because it's quite clearly potentially complicated, in a time when businesses are under a lot of pressure, it's going, we can make it easy, we can make it urgent, and we can take it off our hands and let's get on and do stuff. And that has taken some time to evolve, and we're still working through some of that. Does that answer what you're...
I've got to just, I want to, not a challenge, but like a curiosity for me.
Please.
Part of the logic doesn't make sense, which is when we talk about an example like the pay gap between women and male sportsmen, if we look at solving that problem, we used funds, be it from the Apprenticeship Levy or elsewhere, to upskill the female sports people in a skill that's deemed the most relevant or most needed skill. And let's just say, for example, it's AI or content creation. Is it now the club's responsibility to hire her for that particular task?
That's a good question. No, and so it doesn't fix the macro, how do we pay, because the game can't, at the moment, salaries are dependent on the whole commercial models. And the biggest drain, or the biggest cost, I should say, in sports, in the professional outfits, tends to be the players' salaries. So if the model, like how many tickets you've got, your sponsors you can get, or the other commercial streams, broadcasting revenues, don't support big salaries, this isn't going to make a massive difference.
Right,
So what this is doing is very individually saying, we're giving you greater opportunities and we're looking after you, because we know that to be a professional athlete takes a lot of sacrifice. And that's not to say that other people don't say, but in this instance, then and it's on us to be able to help you transition or help you do other things and help you do, because we know that we don't want you as someone we're looking after and who's one of our club to have a tougher time in years to come.
Gotcha.
So you're investing in that, in that respect, but this is not going to fix the pay gap. This is a way of being, helping deal with a part of the problem, and it was the example. There's other parts of the problem we can look at.
So the skills would typically be a kind of aligned then to making the best of their current role, as opposed to skills otherwise related.
Look, there's a whole bunch of ways you can look at it, and I think the thing I would maybe step back and say, what is the individual wanting to achieve and do? So do you want to, I'm thinking of someone who wants to go into fashion right now, or do you want to actually go on and do stadium-based stuff? It's really understanding what this stuff does, and there's a wonderful array. We're looking at something around maritime engineering at the moment as well. So there's a wonderful array of different courses out there that are really, really useful for people. So it ultimately boils down to, in this instance, looking at the player and their pathways and what they think they want to do, and whether they're engaged in that thinking yet, and how you can do it. What we're saying is there's some really, really cool and obvious ones that actually come and join a cohort, join 15 other people like you to come and learn this, get an alumni, get exposed to exports, get exposed to and that's an amazing set of skills. So there's different ways of going into this. Does that?
It does, absolutely. And then, so what proportion of the funding behind those initiatives would come from the Apprenticeship Levy, and what proportion of the funding would come from just revenue?
We are trying really, really hard to get most of it funded by the Apprenticeship Levy.
Boom. So it's just a net win.
So that's because exactly right.
Yeah.
We want momentum.
Yeah.
We want momentum.
Yeah,
now, there is, if we're trying to build stuff, there's going to be a cost, a lower cost, but relative to the outcome and the ability to do it, we're trying really hard to just focus on use this levy to do good things.
Yes.
People need to start talking about skills differently. Now, one of the things we're trying to do is use sport to help change that conversation. But actually, in the boardroom, where's those conversations? Say, and look, if you go to all the think tanks at Davos and everything, they're all there. But how is that really permeating through a business to go, what's my skills audit? What do I need? How can I do this quickly? And really just recognize that we're all in transition right now. And how do we deal with that? So I think there's a big macro piece about the power of sport to help shift big conversations and cultural change. Because, you know, when you look at adoptions of things that we should be doing for net zero and everything else, it's the movable middle that we've got to attack, because the ones at one end are always going to do it, the ones at the other end are never going to do it. It's this 60-70% that we have the power to go, oh, that's my role, that's what I've got to do.
And were you're obviously a man who's driven by social change, so were you satiated with the level of social change that was coming out of the Quins when you were there?
You know, genuinely blessed that the people around the club, the owners and the board really cared about this stuff. So it wasn't trying to convince people, it was like, how do we fit it all in actually? How do we do this the right way?
Right,
so,
that's nice.
And so I was really lucky. And actually I think rugby in general really does think like that, particularly because the model itself, there's lots of, yes, okay, you're in theory the top of the pyramid, you're the premier club in your local area, but you get lots of people that played around the local area for a long time, who come on a Saturday maybe to watch Harlequins once or twice a year or whatever, but they've been playing for Cobham, or they've been playing for, and there's this network of just amazing stuff going on really close to you in your community. So you're always hearing about this. And I think sports clubs are really good at that. I think that happens even at the big Man Cities and everything else. And I think that's where we're different as the UK versus American sports models to some degree, that we're so close to our communities and what's going on. We're trying really hard to keep that alive and galvanized, that it's quite, the infrastructure's there to help make social impact really turn on. And then you're always looking at, well, which problem can I help solve? So at the back of the stoop, in the north stand, there was we had a classroom, and there was a teacher in there, and we helped bring in young people, and I don't want to do a disservice, who were being excluded from school for various reasons, and take the hardest people to bring them back into the fold, but use a bit of sport. Use a bit of sport as well as the education to get things moving, to really help the local communities. To say, we got involved in building from scratch a free school. To say, what's our role in inspiring? What's our role in doing this? And we set up a foundation. There's a great guy, Mark, who's now off to wonderful bigger things in Tottenham, but just galvanizing amazing initiatives through the Central Premier Rugby guys who are always doing good stuff. And so it was kind of in your soul. But I do think it is in most sports clubs, clubs like that. I think it's harder for some of the sports to do it, but when you've got a club in your area, you are a focal point, you know. And I remember some initiatives that were going around with bringing Ukrainian refugees, and going, well, it wasn't so much that you were going to try and house them or give them, it was more that the people helping you would bring them all together on a Saturday. Just give some lightness to this, you know, and these social clubs, it was a social element to the sports element. And I think, you know, we've got 3 or 4 big pillars in society that people congregate around, which is schools and education, religion, churches, whatever, and sport. And this is a really social cultural model, and I think it's, you know.
What do you think about countries, for example, that are potentially exploiting the social good of sport to sport wash their history?
So I'm always going to be, you probably gathered this by now, I'm always going to look for the good and the optimism in this. And I think if you're referring to things like in the Middle East and some of the things that have come out, there's no one reason people make big decisions, I don't think. So there'll be a variety of things. But if you were to look at it from the point of view that said, we have to transition as a country potentially, let's just name this, from oil or whatever it might be. What are the levers we need to pull to do that well, to engage our society, to engage our young people, to make that transition just and fair and keep us where we want to be for our society? And if one of those levers is engaging in sport in the right and proper way, then I understand that. Now, if that hurts people in the short term, I do not like that and understand that. So the question is, how do you balance the desire and the good if it's authentically that's the desire, as opposed to like the greenwashing thing? Fine, if people are greenwashing, not interested, you know. But if it's actually part of we need to do this as a plan and we're trying genuinely to grow things, then I think there's a lot of people need to just get underneath the transition plan.
Yes.
As opposed to throw rocks, unless they need to throw rocks. So, and that's where you have to try to get the judgment right. So I think some people have absolutely, let's do this because it will take away people from the fact that you know, some oil companies are doing. That's not cool. That's not cool at all. But I think as society we smell that pretty quickly. We smell that pretty quickly. But if it's part of let's do the right thing as a transition, I think we have to be open to that.
Yeah.
I agree with you actually that to start this upskilling conversation using sports is really clever. People understand it absolutely crystal clear about the career of a sportsman and the potential problems that follow after a relatively short career in sport. But when we talk about the upskilling conversation, even though Maikai is quite young as a company, there are companies in the UK who have huge talent deficits. They've got 1,000 open positions, let's say. Can those companies contact Maikai? Are you set up to talk with companies like that yet?
The short answer is yes, because actually, if you step back from this, you're going, what we're really trying to do is change the national narrative about skills. So, and to your point, we've got the ability through culture, sport, music does it too, but sport in this instance, to say, think about this differently. Let's get this in people's mindset, because actually by giving people the right skills, and the concept of lifelong learning now is real. We hear these words being thrown about, it really is real. If you look at, I've got a 15-year-old boy and a 12-year-old guy, what they're going to have to keep learning to keep getting jobs and be competitive is very different to someone who's almost 50 has done to date. So the concept of we're moving from jobs to skills is real. The ability for sports voices to help make that narrative understood, to help people drive and do the things they need to do. So how does an HR department change? How do all the people, the big businesses change to now be a skills-driven type of organisation is things that we need to try and help encourage. So therefore, can big companies come and talk to us about that? That's where we sit. That's all we're thinking about day in, day out. And I'm not saying we're going to, we're not the Accentures or the Deloittes of this world who will reorganise your whole business, but we will give you tools to start the projects, to get people excited, to change the narrative, to build your energy in the short term, but also to help you deliver on your more long-term marathon thinking.
And if you're the company, of course there's the company themselves who have the open positions, but there's also the people inside the organisation, and there's a lot more of them than there are of company owners. If I'm sat within a company who perhaps is hiring for a position I feel actually I would be capable of doing myself if I had the support to learn those skills, can I, as an employee, reach out to Maikai or actually to my employer and alert them to the fact that, in fact, an apprenticeship levy might make my learning of these skills possible? I could fill the role myself at a net benefit to everybody involved.
Really interesting. At the moment, we go through the companies. So, but if someone were to come to us and say, hey, we're trying to direct them to the right people, but at the moment, you're saying, we'd probably say, go back to your line manager, head of HR, ask these questions, these things are available, and by the way, then we can help point, if they don't have it, to the right education providers to give you those skills and build that program around you. So we are currently not saying, because we don't have an apprenticeship levy pot, so we work and help people manage it. So.
But they are in effect ambassadors of the conversation, aren't they? The employees are the perfect people who want to upskill themselves.
Absolutely.
And so they're your kind of best representation in the company to say, all of this is possible, we're throwing it back to the treasury for nothing.
Absolutely. And you see that when you ignite this, all of a sudden everyone puts their hands up. Can I do that? Oh my God, we need this.
And it's scuba diving covered. I'd be going for scuba diving.
There's a whole bunch of things that come to it. And so it's exciting. That's when because you're creating change.
Absolutely.
And that helps.
On an all-level basis as well, from the employee, from the frontline people working in jobs to actually the bottom line, the P&L of the company overall. It's a hell of a mission, David. It's a big old take on you've got ahead of yourself. If things ignite and go well, you're going to be a busy gentleman for the next few years.
But that's the beauty of it, and that gets you up in the morning, right? So, but equally, as a founder, you have to make sure that you it's all very well having a good vision, but you've got to have a detailed plan on how to get there and work through the building blocks to get there. Otherwise, it's, whatever that phrase is about having a dream and no plan. So
Didn't plan it.
Yeah, exactly.
It falls through.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that I suppose I'm interested in is you referred to yourself as a custodian for several of your experiences. Do you now view yourself as an entrepreneur?
No, it's hilarious. My wife teases me about that because of my age. Entrepreneurs are young. Yeah.
You're a market maker.
No, not yet. I don't know what the label is. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like you're on the Maikai mission. I'm driven by the mission.
So you're a man who's a part of a team.
Definitely. We are bringing people together. I've used the word glue to just help solve problems.
And in your view, what makes a good team?
Interesting. We talk about this quite a lot. So we all love who we work with at the moment, which is great. That really helps. So good people obviously around you is the foundation of everything, and in the approach. We have phrases like "be direct but be kind," and we all hold each other to account by that. So there's no point in going, "Oh, that was a lovely piece of work, thanks." So what makes a good team is the communication, the focus on the vision, the belief in what you're trying to achieve, and then my job is to try and stretch people enough that they're excited and they do it and not twang, and bring us all together, not, I think, distract by doing too many things, because one of the challenges we have is it is such a big vision. You could spend your entire life working out how to solve problems, but you actually got to deliver on things. So is having the right skills to say, while I go maybe a bit idea fairy over here, I've got people around me, and I've got an amazing business partner in particular who'll go, can we come back here please? And it's being interchangeable and trusting your teams to deliver on this stuff. But actually, believing and understanding in the mission is probably, I'm being a bit verbose now, so believing and understanding the mission is what really, living that day to day is important.
What was your greatest achievement when you worked in social housing?
I was really, really blessed. We had a lovely opportunity to do a lot of good. And so we did things where we helped with a bunch of other social housing trusts create, it's going to sound really dull, but it's really cool, financial products that allowed all sections of society to be able to afford to buy their homes and everything else. And we sort of, you had to bid for lots and lots of government money to be able to do that in your local area and deliver that. So that opened up the housing ladder to thousands and thousands of people. So all of that was amazing. But I also think we then took a little bit further and went and built a foundation. And we said, okay, it's brilliant to regenerate communities. Some of the ones we did, we got rid of all the gangs, we got people jobs. You got into the next layer of the conversation. So there was a lot of, gang crime in certain areas, and we put brilliant people in there to change that. And in years to come, you come back and you go, wow, that's a really thriving opportunity for people's children, for people. And it's being able to open up the employment piece, being able to open up the connections to say this is a cool place to work. And it still makes me super proud. In the UK in particular, we're very, very good at placemaking. So when you look at, when new buildings go up, now, I haven't been involved in this for over 10 years, but in general, you'll have mixed tenure housing, which means you have all sorts of, social housing, intermediate housing, private housing, all in together. So it's that, was it Bevan who said, it's the doctor, everyone who lives in the same community. And that creates a sense of ownership that sometimes you don't get in certain societies where you have polarized communities of very, very wealthy, and we are really good at that. And it's not perfect, but as a philosophy, so that makes me very proud. There's lots of things I was proud of. Lots of things.
And do you have a similar sense of pride for a particular moment at your time at the Harlequins?
Yeah, it's tricky. Honestly, again, it's the people. What they. I remember. Of course, you love the winning piece and the lifting trophies, and that's what you're there to do. But it's actually how people react when things don't go, and you see the team I remember a small instance of that was huge amount of unexpected snow. We were going to have to cancel the game. The whole club was out with shovels trying to get the thing going. I remember having to talk to the broadcasters and go, look, we're going to have to cancel this. And I stood on the chair in the middle of the office, and I hadn't even finished, and people were off doing their jobs. And I was like, yeah, that's brilliant. I think you might think they didn't want to listen to me. They knew what to do, and that made me proud. And of course, there'll be bigger events than that. The achievements they did in the 150th. What the academy is amazing, bringing the young talent through. There's so many wonderful things that you could. I was particularly happy with how we managed to, for a little while, really push the envelope on sort of women's rugby. All of those things give you but the pride is in the people, and because it's them that's achieving it. All you're trying to do is help them, give them space and time to achieve and be their best self. So
Why did you leave?
10 years in, I suppose, there or thereabouts. It's a long time, and I kind of had my sort of, I'd probably have to dig in again for another 4 or 5 years. We'd wanted to build a sort of look at a new stadium and things like that, and that slowed down quite a lot because of the politics, like the genuine politics of people, things changing. So I just realised that I had my sort of Jerry Maguire moment about I was beginning to get closer to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and I felt I needed to do something else. So had a grown-up conversation with the board and formed Maikai, which was good.
Was that a hard decision to leave?
Yes, because you love it. It's something about sport, it's passionate, it gets under your skin. I think my chairman used to say that, it gets under your skin, and once a Harlequin, always a Harlequin. So it's that is hard. And my kids grew up there, and it was wonderful. It's a wonderful experience. It's an utter privilege to be involved in sport. So, but it's the right thing to open up the next chapter.
Do you still go back there and watch games?
I've been back a few times, but if I'm honest, I spent 10 years watching games, so we've gone and watched other sports for a bit.
Yeah.
so go and watch some football, go and do other things. So, but yeah, it's a great ground. If you've ever been there, it's a great ground. It's a really family ground, and it's awesome. Who
do you go and watch when you watch the football?
Arsenal, yeah. And actually, my daughter loves the Arsenal women's team, so we go up there quite a bit to watch them. So yeah, big fans of that.
Great.
So.
Well, now if you said Arsenal, I've got no more questions.
I realise I probably just upset half.
I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Great. Okay. Well,
thank you guys.
Thank you for your time today.